Shall we begin?
We'll go.
Let's begin now.
All right, folks. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Frankly Francisco podcast. I am your host, Francisco. Today we have a special guest. I've known this gentleman for quite a few years. He's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Good motivator. He's a go-getter. And that's the phrase he lives by. I'd like to introduce everybody to Mr. Robert Garcia. How we doing, Robert?
I'm doing very well on the podcast. I know it's Frankly Francisco's podcast, but I'm going to call you by your real name, my friend. So I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. So let's do it.
So now for the folks out there, let the folks know a little bit about yourself, a little about what you do. And the reason that I brought you on the show was so you to share some of the trials and tribulations you've been through to get you where you are now, and the successes that you've gotten since leaving where you left from. So just give a little background for the people that don't know you to get a little bit about yourself. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, the first thing I'll mention is I took a little bit of a different path through. Let me go back to college for just a minute. I didn't actually finish college until I was in my 30s. So I just want people to understand that, sometimes it's not going to go the way you necessarily want it to go, where you go to college immediately after high school and whatnot. So, I didn't realize that. Let me back up for a minute. I realized at a young age that probably wasn't the best idea for me to go to college immediately after high school, because I thought I was going to go there and party and, flunked out and the whole 9 yards and just had a whole bunch of debt. Right. So I took a little bit different approach. I ended up getting laid off from a job after 9/11, and then decided to go to college shortly thereafter. So just want people to understand that aspect of it. But born and raised here in Ohio, lived in the same area that I was born in my entire life. But I love it here. So my entire family's here. The overwhelming majority of my family's here. Fast forward to worked in the banking industry for about 15 years for one of the largest banks in the country. And it just got to a point where it was just time for a change. I don't want to say anything derogatory about any, large company or anything like that. But as a lot of people will figure, and, I'm middle-aged, I'm 48 years old. So I just knew that it wasn't for me anymore. And it was just time to do something different. So a very good friend of mine came to me and was actually asking, if I knew anybody that might be interested in, working, and I'm now in the insurance industry. And I said, quite frankly, I might be interested. So tell me more about it. Let's talk about it. So, fast forward, almost a year now. I've been doing this for almost a year. And it's the best thing I could have ever done. I wish I'd have done it sooner. A lot of people say that when they get into something different, but it's the right thing for me, and it's worked out extremely well thus far.
So for a lot of people out there who are hesitant to make a step and that change in their life, I went through that step myself. A lot of people know I did security for 12 years before I got into banking. The financial industry, we were at the same one. They're the ones who gave me my start. I'm still in the financial industry right now. And at some point I'm like, I want to shift out to do something else. But for a lot of people who are afraid to take that next step, because older people sometimes tend not to want to, they like the security where they are. They're afraid to take that next step in their life. What was the biggest pain points for you to finally take that leap of faith and move into an industry that you feel more comfortable, that you're happy to go to work every day, that you enjoy doing?
Well, I would say it's a couple of things that happened. First of all, I think COVID was a real big factor. I just realized that I just wasn't happy with what I was doing ultimately, and at the time too, I did ask to move into a different position. I was denied. So I said, what, I need to look at some other avenues, some other options. And, quite frankly, since everything that happened with COVID, that I know that why why would I want to live my life in a fashion where I was unhappy? You know what I mean? I mean, life is too short.
Mhm.
I just couldn't see myself doing what I was doing for the rest of my life. And, even my wife was telling me how different of a person I am, now that I'm no longer doing what I was doing before, and so it just kind of dawned on me that I need to do something different and get out there. And I do want to say this to not only the older people, but the younger people. First of all, number one thing is, I don't know that I'm going to be successful what I'm doing right now. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, failure is a part of life, and that's truly how you learn. So if you are thinking about doing something like, changing jobs or careers or anything of that sort, I think the first thing you need to do is you need to talk to some people in the field that you want to transition into, right? And understand where they started and figure out what your path is going to be. Okay. And then with that being said, I think the number one thing is don't be afraid of failure. I can't tell you how many successful people have failed multiple times. Okay. Not one time, not two times. We're talking multiple times. So if that's holding you back, and of course it can be a financial thought that you're considering, can I afford this financially? No doubt. I mean, don't necessarily leave what you're doing to, you can kind of ease into it, if you
Mhm.
will. Okay. But excuse me, I was fortunate enough to be in a position that I could do that. I could just leave my other job, and believe me, it hasn't come without without some sacrifices and some difficulties. Don't get me wrong, but it's been the most amazing ride that I could ever imagine. And I still have, like I said, I haven't even been doing this for a year, so um, I'll leave it at that for now.
So it's pretty impressive that you were in the financial world for 15 years, decided to make that change, and you're starting to really hone in and focus in on what you're doing in the insurance world. Now, with the insurance world, things can be, sink or swim. You know what I mean? Either you're either you're bringing in clientele, you're not bringing in clientele. So, how do you balance that medium of having to worry about whether you're going to be able to get somebody in, building your book of business, building your clientele? Because essentially it's like being your own boss when you're in the insurance industry, essentially, because you have to bring in the clientele. What are some of the issues that you found so far being in the insurance industry?
So we believe in something called go giver. I don't want to confuse that with go getter.
Mhm.
Okay. Let me talk about that for just a minute. So it's actually a book, Go Dash Giver. If you get a chance, please get your hands on it. The first book is Red, and then there's a series of books beyond that. But it's a phenomenal mentality, in my opinion, because it's all about helping people. Okay. And what it ultimately boils down to is connecting people with the right people in the right situation. Okay. And that's really what we focused on from the get go. And believe me, it's taking quite a bit of time to build up. A lot of people like to use the term network, and that's ultimately what it boils down to. However, I have clients that ask me, for example, do somebody that does taxes? Well, I've actually gone out and found people that do taxes and or CPAs or anything of that nature. Okay. So what I do for my clients is not only do I just want to be their insurance advisor, I want to be their trusted advisor, period. So they can come to me to ask me questions like that. And I can say, hey, you might want to think about talking to this tax advisor over here. Let me introduce you to them. Okay. So some of the challenges, I would say a couple of things. Number one, I would say, when you first get into something like this, people may not necessarily believe that you're experienced enough in that particular field, right? Okay, so but I'm a fast learner, so again, I still don't know everything, and it'll take a while to learn everything in this particular field. It's absolutely fascinating, and I absolutely love it. The other thing too is I think some people struggle with providing you some of their personal information.
Mhm.
Okay, so you have to be real careful with that. You just have to handle it a certain way, and understand that, look, I'm only trying to help you. Okay, so and then ultimately, really the business, in my opinion, is going to be based pretty much on referrals. Okay, from hopefully your clients, from new clients, from family, from friends, from anyone that you come in contact with, okay, is what it really boils down to, in my opinion. Because I'll tell you what, a lot of these, the difference between what we do and a lot of these other insurance agencies do is they do a lot of cold calling, okay? And tell me about the time you got a phone call, a cold call about somebody asking you about insurance and how receptive you were to that, okay?
Right.
Probably weren't very receptive, okay? We try to avoid that if at all possible. And again, it's taken quite some time to build it up to the point that we built it up to, but I think it's a much better framework, if you will, business model to get out there and talk to people. And, and really, to me, it just boils down to talking to as many people as you possibly can, letting them know we're here to help people. We just want to do right by people, and it's worked out extremely well this far, I have to say.
So essentially you're building a rapport and building trust with those customers, and they're coming back, word of mouth is spreading for you. And they're saying, hey, come see this guy here. He takes good care of us. He's just not an insurance agent. He goes above and beyond for us every single time. And that's pretty much, I can see where some of that came from the financial world, because essentially we have to do the same thing as build that rapport with the customers to have them keep coming back and build that trust and so on and so forth. But I think in the insurance industry, it's a little bit different because you're handling a lot more sensitive information for them, insurance policies, house mortgage, everything that you can possibly think of when it comes to insurance. And you are right. Some people are hesitant to give out that certain information, and you have to be able to build that trust with that. But when that base is built, it can lead to, massive things for you. So in the long term, at some point, are you trying to, branch out to your own office? Are you trying just to stay where you're at for a couple of years until you've learned enough to be able to hold down your own office?
That's definitely something that we've talked about. And ultimately, I think that's the ultimate goal, is to have my own agency, decide how big we want it to be, how many employees we want to have. But that's definitely something that I have in the works, in the plans, if you will. You know what I mean? I just wanted to make sure, I knew what I was getting myself into, because that's a very large investment, and you need to be prepared financially to do that type of thing. So at this point in time, I think the plan is a year, maybe a little bit past that, something we'll talk about doing going forward. And again, we've already talked about it, and everyone's on board, and we'll work that out when the time comes. Hopefully sooner rather than later. And yeah, with that said, what a ride! What a ride! I just can't tell you how all the great people we've met. And by the way, I did want to touch on something else, because you mentioned how the contact with the people. So one of the things I do too is I run into a business, and it's a tremendous new business, a little restaurant opened up. I don't know if you know the area very well here in Northeast Ohio, but they opened up in a city called Sheffield Lake, and it's essentially Puerto Rican food. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And it's delicious. So I posted it on my Facebook, right, talking about them. Well, actually, a local news broadcast came and interviewed the owner of the restaurant. Well, she considers it a cafe, but it's to me, it's a restaurant. And so, I've had the food, the coffee is delicious. It's absolutely amazing. And some people are like stunned. So I shared that post or that interview with on my Facebook page. And, a couple of people are checking it out. They're like, hey, where's this place at? We want to go try it out. It's that type of thing. Again, going back to the go-giver mentality, where it's all about helping those businesses, those clients, in every possible way you can, ultimately. Okay. So I cannot stress that enough, how important that is. So with that said, I'll let you do your thing.
So listen, with the go-giver mentality, that significantly changed your life, even outside of work, correct? It's done.
Oh,
because I've seen you post a ton of stuff for other people. If people don't have houses that are for rent or for sale, I've seen you put it out for them, not expecting anything back. So the whole premise of being a go-giver is just to give as much as yourself without expecting anything in return.
Right. So exactly, because we believe ultimately it's going to come back to you tenfold. Okay. If not more. And, again, we're just in the infant stages of this. And again, networking, a lot of networks and a lot of, people I hire do this. It's a tit for tat type of thing. Mm-hmm. You bring me something, I'll bring you something. Okay. And hey, that works for some people. Good for you. I'm not knocking that in any way, shape, or form. but I truly think this is a very Christian mentality. Okay. And therefore, it becomes more of who you are, what you do. And ultimately, uh, it, I think it's the best way to interact with people. Okay. Because if people feel like, you don't expect anything from them, okay, then it just works itself out. And people are much more open with you. People trust you. People value you ultimately, and that's really what it boils down to. It's about the value that you bring to your clients and the people around you, friends, family, anyone. It really is a universal thought process, because it impacts your relationships. It impacts all the people around you, and it's phenomenal. I can't say enough about it.
And where can people find these books at? Is this something that just applied to you guys, or can you find it online as well?
You can definitely find it online. Go Dash Giver. Like I said, the first book is the red book, and like I said, there's a series of books. But start off with that first book, the red one. It's absolutely fantastic. I wish I had a copy of it. I would show it to you real quick. I actually have a picture of it. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
On my as part of my photos, as we were just playing around with it. Hopefully I can get to it, because I'm not very
tech
very
savvy.
inclined.
But
I'm sure I can send it to you. I'm sure I can forward to you. But yeah, please check it out. You can probably read it in one rainy day afternoon. Take you 2-3 hours, at most. And it tells the story. It's kind of a narrative. It's a real easy read. Trust me.
So, to be honest with you, man, from the time I've known you, the time I've seen a complete turnaround with you. I was there. I've seen the job beat you down, man. I've seen, where you just wouldn't want to come to work, where you were just down in the dumps. And, being in the financial industry, that will beat you down. And people don't understand the mental strain. And it's not even physical. People don't get it. It's not a physical thing. This is a mental. It'll mentally drain you. And that mental drain will turn into stress, and that stress will affect your body. You know what I mean? You are completely different, man, from the last time I saw you in person. I mean, you just look so unhappy. And by you making this change, you took that next step in your life to say, you know what? I don't need this anymore. You took that leap of faith to say, hey, there's something better for me out there. I mean, you were a little nervous at first, but I think everybody is. Everybody takes that leap of faith. I took mine from, doing security to the financial world. And eventually I'm going to take my leap again into doing something else, but it's stories like yours that people want to hear. You know what I mean? It's stories like yours that people want to hear, because they know it doesn't matter how old you are or how old you're getting, you can be successful and do something that you love to do.
I really can't agree more with that. That what I was doing before, it was just, like I said, it was time. It's fascinating when people tell you, and you're not the first person that's told me that, by the way. I've had family, other friends tell me, they knew it was time. And matter of fact, it was somebody that kind of really triggered it. They said, you don't want to do this anymore. Why are you still doing it? And I was like, you know what? They're right. Why am I doing this anymore? So, but it just came at the right time, the right situation, but it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you have to go out and make it happen. And it doesn't necessarily take such a huge leap. Okay. I mean, if you need to take baby steps, so be it. You're still working full time and doing what you're doing.
Yes.
Last September, when I was studying for the property casualty test and life and health test, I was still working full time. It takes those certain sacrifices, but you have to be licensed to do this. Okay. To sell insurance. So that's real important. And don't believe me, this job has drawbacks. How many times the door's been shut in your face, or the person hangs up the phone on you. You definitely have to have the right mentality for this too. So I worked in the banking industry long enough. I felt like I had thick enough skin to be able to handle that. You know what I mean? So to deal with those types of circumstances. But at the same time, whatever you need to do to get where you need to go. Let me mention this real quick. So a long time ago, I was watching a TV show, and somebody said something that's always stuck with me throughout my entire life. Sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do in order to get where you want to go. Okay.
Facts.
And whether that means going to college, or whether that means working a second job for a while, or whether that means I don't know, reading, all the books on the subject that you're interested in, then so be it. But you have to make that sacrifice. Okay, no one's going to hand you anything in life. Ultimately, okay, you have to go and get it. You have to take it, and you have to work at it. It's not just gonna, $100,000 jobs don't just fall into people's laps. Okay, those people either go out and get an education, get the experience. They figure it out some way, somehow. Okay, and so I just want that to hopefully resonate with people. If they hear this or are listening to this, and that's really what it ultimately boils down to, in my opinion. Okay, in my most humble opinion, as you say.
Well, it's like anything else. You have to put in the work for anything you do. Like, I'm putting in the work for this. I'm tired. That we you know how it was. This is a grueling day that you work. You got to deal with people every day, all day long. Basically, sometimes you got to deal with adults that act like children sometimes, and it's just it's true. It's true. But I enjoy doing this because this is my stress relief. This is a way for me to get some of my tension out, and I'm able to talk to people like you who have been in that same situation, who's dug themselves out of a hole, who's improved their lifestyle from what it used to be and went from point A to point B. And I think people enjoy hearing this stuff. This is why I make my platform open to everybody. This is why I do what I do, because I want stories from average Joes, regular people. Celebrities, to me, it's people interview celebrities so much, but it's the people like us that make the world go round. Without people like us, celebrities wouldn't be where they are. You know what I mean? Without us,
Right.
athletes wouldn't be who they are. We're the ones who spend the money. You know what I mean? We're the ones who buy the books. We're the one who, see the movies. If it's not for the regular folk, you know what I mean? The people who are on the higher end wouldn't be where they are.
And that's a fascinating niche. I like that. I really do. I didn't realize that until you just mentioned it. So what that's all about. So how amazing, who is thinking about the little guy or the average Joe? Okay, although I hope I don't think of myself necessarily as average, but I'm just kidding. But with that said, no, I get where you're coming from, and I think there's a lot to be said about what you're trying to do and accomplish. So good for you. And hey, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely
Absolutely.
fantastic.
This is what we do. This is the whole point of the show. This is what's driving me to get into a medium where there's 6 billion people out here, and there's a voice for everybody. And sometimes people's voice is not being heard. You have business owners that have fantastic products, or they have, a restaurant owner that has fantastic food, or a musician that does music, but he's not getting the platform to get heard or get seen. So I try to give everybody a platform that wants to get a platform. It doesn't matter whether you sell insurance, doesn't matter if you're an artist, you write a book, you're an author. If you want to come on the show, come on the show. I'll be more than willing to put you out there, because I think everybody deserves to have their voice heard. You know what I mean? Everybody deserves to have their voice heard, whether it be in one medium or another. It's just an opportunity for people to get heard and get seen.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. I appreciate you saying that. And so now, let me plug what the insurance, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we're with the North Coast Insurance Group. We're located in Avon, Ohio. Okay. We're an exclusive agent of Allstate. Okay. But with that said, I just want to make sure, just to touch base on a couple things about insurance. Okay. Number one, I don't think people realize that insurance is probably 90% about liability. Okay. So, for example, in the state of Ohio, the minimum liability coverage is by state law is $25,000 per person and $50,000 per accident. Okay. But let me ask you a question. If you were in an accident in the state of Ohio and you lived in Ohio at the time, and let's say it was the other person's fault and they injured one of your kids and they had to go to the hospital, okay, and maybe they're in the hospital for a week, do you think $25,000 is going to be enough to pay for that hospital stay?
Absolutely not.
Exactly. Okay. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you're talking to an insurance professional, most especially about liability. Okay. Because, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, of what people don't necessarily understand. And I'm really in the business too of trying to educate people if they're willing to be educated. and having those conversations with people so they understand exactly where they're at when it comes to, like, for example, their auto insurance. Okay. And one other thing I like to point out too about what we do is we're also the only insurance company in the industry where you can get something called accident forgiveness from the moment you start doing business with us. So, and here in Ohio, I can't say that for anywhere else, but so let me ask you this question. If you were in an what's the point of having insurance if you get into an accident and your insurance rates go up? Okay. Whether it's your fault or not. All right. So quick little story. 10 years ago, I'm picking up my son from school. Okay. Here in the Northeast Ohio area. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. Person comes barreling through the parking lot. Okay. And sideswipes me. Okay. Police come. They say, you know what? Because it happened in a parking lot of a school, it's called a no-fault accident. So that means each party goes to their own insurance, okay? And you deal with it accordingly. Now, I went to my insurance. My insurance company said, oh, wait a minute, there was such and such insurance company. We're not going to go after them. It's called, the term is called subrogation. So basically what they do is they would pay for my claim, and then they would go after the other party if it was the other party's fault.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, they didn't do that, okay? So, not knowing any better, a few months later, I get my bill in the mail, my insurance rate doubles. Okay. Why would you want to do business in that form? Okay. Now, if you've been with an insurance company for a while, you might very well have something called accident forgiveness. But like I said, and there is a small cost for it, don't get me wrong, but you never know when an accident's going to happen. So why not avoid that increase in cost if you can? Okay. So just to plug one of the things that's great about what I do, in my personal opinion. So a lot of insurance companies out there, a lot of insurance agents. And by the way, it is a rather cutthroat business at times because, you got multiple agents talking to the same person, trying to get their business and saying, hey, this agent or this company, you don't want to do business with them, and I never do that. But it's fascinating to see what people are willing to do or what they're willing to say to get your business. And really, do you really want to do business with people like that? I would hope not. So
ultimately you just want to stand apart from everybody else that's out there. You don't want to be,
absolutely.
You don't want to be the same as everybody out there. You want to be a cut above. And the way I think you'll be a cut above is doing what you're doing, educating the people. I think if education is the key, it's like, what I do, I love educating teenagers. That's one of the things I love doing because you teach them from a young age to how to better handle their finances, to how to, live within their means. And I think the same thing should apply for insurance. I think a lot of people, didn't get life insurance until recently. I was one of these people who's like, I don't need it. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. But then, when I got COVID, I got the scare of my life, you know what I mean? And it straightened me right out. To be able to go out there and get it. And I educated myself first. I did I shopped around. I talked to people who are willing to sit down and give me the ins and outs of it. And ended up getting what I needed to get. But it's like you said, when there's people like you who are willing to educate and not just try to push somebody to get into something they don't need to get into, I think that's what brings the value to what you do.
Well, and I think it's important too to understand, if you're doing right by people, if you sit down with somebody and they're doing business with someone else and you review what they have and you say to them, you know what you have right now works for you. Okay, keep that. There's no reason to change anything right now. Or, I don't care if you do life insurance with someone else, but do life insurance. I mean, if COVID hasn't taught anybody anything about everything that's happened and understand how dangerous COVID is, and if you don't have enough life insurance, what would happen to your family? I mean, Julio, that's a perfect example. I mean, especially if, like, for example, the husband is the only wage earner, or the primary wage earner, or the sole wage earner in the family, and something happens, what would happen to your family? You have what, 5 children?
5.
I mean, that is so unnerving to me, in this day and age, and especially people with young kids. And one other thing I want to mention about life insurance too. Life insurance will never be less expensive than it is today, because a huge factor in the cost of life insurance is how old you are. Okay. So the younger you are, the better the price of life insurance. And you can get a ton of life insurance anymore for a very small amount of money. I mean, especially if you're in your 20s or in pretty good health, I mean, you're talking maybe, I mean, I don't want to say anything out there, but it's very inexpensive. Let's put it that way. So, please have a conversation with somebody about life insurance at any given time. Again, it depends on the state that you're in, but please do that.
All right, Rob. So listen, it was great having you on the show. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can reach out to you, especially in the Northeast Ohio area. Where is it they can reach Robert Garcia?
So you can reach me at Robert H. Garcia at allstate.com. You can also reach me at RHGGAR2006 at yahoo.com. That's my personal and business email. And then my phone number is 440-670-3375. That's my personal cell phone number. You can call me there anytime. And I'm happy to help with anything. And by the way, it's not just about insurance either. Again, go back to the Go Giver. Like I said, if you need an attorney, we've come in contact with some great people. Need a CPA? Be happy to share that information with you if you need that. Whether you're a client or not, doesn't make any difference. Okay, that's just how we do business. All right, it's the right thing to do, and I think people have lost sight of that to some extent. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I love that mentality. I really do. I love that mentality. I love what you're doing. I love the focus that you have. I love how you've turned completely around from, the guy who I used to see just moping around and just hated coming to work every day. I mean, I can't say enough, man. You're glowing now. How happy you are is because you found something you love to do.
And don't get me wrong. I think my 15 years in banking experience give me a very unique perspective on things. And, I've met a lot of great people in that world too, but I appreciate you saying what you're saying. And I hear you, believe me.
So folks, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you coming on, Robert. Anytime you want to come on, let me know. We'll be glad to have you. And like I said, Rob already put out his information for you. We'll post it on the page as well. And they can get a hold of you as well. And thank you folks for tuning in, and we will see you next episode. Thank you.